Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Story, where we discuss what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be.
And welcome to another episode of the Canadian Story, but this is a special episode because this is Lexicon of Labor with Dan Leytham and David Parker, where we talk about whatever the hell we want to, but particularly involving real, tangible, dirty-handed work. Dan is, as we've talked about before, a roofer. Dan, why don't you just share a little bit of what it's been like as a roofer in this lockdown?
Yeah, so when it first happened, I guess whatever it was, February, March more so. We actually didn't really miss a beat at the time because I know a lot of actually companies, like roofing companies in the area, did shut down permanently because I think just out of fear they were like, oh, you know, like certain businesses aren't allowed to go. But it was pretty clear that at the time there's clear stipulations for like essential work, right? So my whole thought process at the time was like, you know, you can't expect a homeowner to like leave their roof completely, you know, unattended or what have you. So that's off the table. Like we're absolutely necessary in that regard. Secondly, as far as like, you know, full roof replacements, you know, again, you can't expect somebody to shell money out of their pocket to have a temporary patch repaired when what they really need is to have the underlying problem addressed properly, right? So we just kept going. And actually, like through the early part of the lockdown, we were like the busiest we've ever been because half the companies were shut down, and we just figured out a way to keep going, you know, as safely as possible because there was a lot of confusion and uncertainty at that time. And yeah, like, you know, we would I just like had bought gloves for all my employees. We would just make sure that we, you know, stayed a good distance apart from each other whenever possible and stuff like that. I was oftentimes like in roofing, I'll have to give rides to certain people and stuff like that. You know, everybody doesn't have a vehicle and what have you. But at that time I was just like, you know, I don't care if you have to cab there, I'm not driving you type thing.
Oh, ruthless.
And I mean, that's just like, you know, it's what we had to do at the time to, you know, make sure we were operating safely. And there was like a lot of questions as far as what this thing was and what it was going to become. So I just wanted to like exercise caution. It made things more difficult as far as like acquiring like materials. Like sometimes like there's a period where like you had to, you know, order things. If you needed something from Home Depot, for instance, you had to like order it online and wait, you know, 3 days for your order to be processed as opposed to getting it on the spot.
Yeah.
There's like lineups outside while like restrictions were in place as far as like capacity in the store and stuff like that. So there was challenges, but yeah, we made it through.
Well, you had quite a good year actually, despite breaking your heel falling off a ladder.
Yeah, we had our best year ever actually. So that was positive, and I think you would probably know who to attribute this quote to, but there's a great quote. Let no crisis go to waste.
Yeah, that's Sun Tzu, yeah. I think, The Art of War. Yeah. All right, I could be wrong. But that's what I think it is. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when things are up in the air and in a state of confusion, that's when the real opportunity for
the churn, right? It's in the like status quo does not allow for a lot of upward mobility. Right. No. The status quo likes to and that should be something people think about in their own lives too. Right. Is if you're doing the same thing you've always done, you're going to get the same results you always get. So if you want different results, you need to change what you're doing. And one of the nice things about crises like this, and there's not very many nice things, but one of the nice things is that there's a lot of people that get frozen in fear. And if you're not afraid, there's a huge opportunity to change, because change is being forced on you. You can take that change and make it into something better. Let's take for example what happened with your injury. Why don't you share with the listeners how that changed your way of approaching business?
Yeah, so I started the roofing company in 2016. So we've had a couple years of you know, solid growth behind us and just a lot of lessons learned along the way. But where I was at just before my injury was, you know, I had a good little crew going and what have you. But me being kind of a younger guy myself, I'm like, I was 30 when the injury happened and stuff like that. Sometimes I kind of felt, and sometimes pressure from my employees as well, to kind of like be up there kind of in the muck with them. Right. And I understand that, you don't want to be a leader that's, sending your guys into battle, but you're a coward yourself type thing,
Yes.
So,
exactly.
So I would often find myself getting stuck having to do kind of like certain tedious tasks or whatever that like I knew I could just, have like a laborer do, or some of my installers or whatever. But when I got injured, obviously that was just not on the table anymore, right? Like I literally couldn't do any of that stuff. So I had to rely on my guys to step up and handle a lot of that stuff. And then that also kind of liberated me to start thinking more from the managerial side and just how to organize them better and, have a whole operation that didn't include me actually performing the
work yourself,
like that.
The work. Because when you started the company, you've gone through a bunch of employees and you've done how many roofs yourself, would you say?
Like literally just by myself?
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time I was pretty quick. Like once things started to get rolling a little bit, I was pretty quick to at least have like a laborer to help me type thing.
Right
off the bat. I've probably done about, I don't know, probably 20 or so, like completely
just by yourself.
Myself.
Yeah. Every piece of it.
Yeah. And then several that have been just sort of a laborer and myself or what have you. But yeah, back to what we were talking about in our conversation in the past week, just you and I think it's important for, a CEO to at least have an understanding of, every component of their operation. Right. And
yes, you need to, as the CEO, you need to know every step along the process better than your employees.
Exactly.
If you don't, you're a bad CEO.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because you basically need to work yourself out of a job at every opportunity. Right. So I started out, I had to, get a ripper in my hand and tear off shingles that, anybody could do, right?
Well, not anyone. We've discovered that some people are afraid of heights.
True. Yeah. Afraid of heights and afraid of hard work, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so there's those components as well.
There's a line that's going to be the catch line: afraid of heights and afraid of hard work.
Does not apply.
So, what have you learned? Because you've done a ton of this hard labor yourself. You're a man who is not afraid of working hard, but it isn't just about working hard, right?
Right. Yeah. Like it's a classic juxtaposition of like work hard versus work smart. But as we alluded to last time on the podcast, there's labor and then there's like productive labor, right? And I think the role of a business is to organize labor to be productive, right? And that determines whether or not you fail or succeed. Like, I could have, whatever it is, to take a stupid example, the labor that my employees provide me, if I'm sending them off to do a house that wasn't contracted, the homeowner comes out.
You're not going to make a lot of money, and people are going to be mad at you.
Exactly. It'll be a very bad thing. That labor is actually a liability at that point, right? Just figuring out ways to better organize things, looking for efficiencies at all times. And, one thing that I kind of try to drive home to my employees is we have this principle that, because it is hard work. So I want to manage their energy levels, right? I don't want to be because you and I both worked for a guy that was kind of, he would crack the whip on us and stuff. And
yeah, he wanted 100% every day.
Yeah, just go.
Get it done.
Yeah. Which there is a component to that, but you got to reserve yourself as a leader for those opportunities when it really matters, right? Because if you're pushing them that hard all the time, people only have a certain threshold before they crack and break, right? And we saw that all the time on.
All the time. People would just lose their shit on one another.
Yeah, exactly, and just like not show up for work. And that's no way to operate a business. You really need that consistency to know day in, day out what you're going to get, right? But yeah, we have this principle that's just, give me 80% of your best every day. You know,
just 80%.
That's manageable. You don't need to give a 100%.
But you shouldn't be giving me 40% either. I don't want your
40%. Exactly. But the important thing is that give that to me every day. There's a great concept in a book by Jim Collins. I believe it's Good to Great, if I'm not mistaken. It might be Great by Choice. But he talks about this concept of the 20-mile march, right? And basically the concept is that like, he uses this example of an expedition. There was 2 expeditions that were on a race to the North or South Pole. I can't remember. But there was one crew leader that was kind of confident and brash and arrogant, and he got a bunch of people to get behind him just on charisma alone and stuff. And then he ran his expedition in the vein that he would just like push them as hard as they could go every day, like, let's go guys, whatever. And there was another guy who he spent like months planning. He was just like paranoid about every detail, every situation that they could come across. And his principle with his crew was we march for 20 miles every day, and then we set up shop. Right. Wherever is like, a good place to finish our day. We go for 20 miles, we stop, we set up camp in a spot that is, conducive to our needs. And we do the same thing the next day, right? Consistency.
And then they're like, and then they just get used to it, right? It's training. Yeah. It's a habit that forms.
It becomes a meditation almost.
When you can do something habitually, it becomes way easier that you don't have to think through it anymore.
Yeah.
Like the first time you do the 20-mile march, you're like, oh, that was long. And the second time you do it, it's like, oh, and then the third time you're like, I can do this in my sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like familiarity. I mean, you don't want to get, there's a fine line between that and getting, stuck in a rut or whatever, but you really do want that kind of just exercise, right? Of just people know what to expect more or less when they come to work,
Yeah, people want that. They want things to make sense.
Boundaries, right?
One of the things I find employees complain about most about their bosses is saying, "Oh, they're no good at doing X, or they're no good." The employee has seen an inefficiency that just keeps getting repeated because the employer's too proud to ask the employees, "How can we make this better?"
Totally, yeah. And I think that's a big thing, is being willing to be democratic in a sense. And I think oftentimes bosses like there's actually a company in Hamilton called Boss Roofing, and like I see the guy often when I'm in like purchasing materials and stuff, and like he's just this like loudmouth, like Italian type dude. No disrespect to any Italians out there, but
Italians are wonderful people. They're just very passionate. They're very passionate.
Yeah. But you can kind of tell he just loves being the guy that like tells everybody what to do, right? And I mean, you do have to you have to oftentimes I think people get into things like that for money or narcissism or whatever the case may be, but you have to really understand the principles of why your operation exists. And then when you have that understanding, you can then have that thesis to kind of relate to your employees when they do have concerns, right? Or questions. Or
can you give us an example of like a time that you had to solve a problem with that an employee was concerned about?
Well, I mean, I would say I can give you this example. I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I had this situation with my employee last year where we'd been on this like really tough job. Things hadn't gone to plan, and it was really hard work, and things had kind of gone sideways a little bit. He was getting all like hyped up throughout the day, and was starting to kind of like lip off and stuff like that. And so I just had to like pull him aside and be like, listen, like I totally understand. There are frustrations that will arise. This is no way to deal with our problems, right? We need to have open lines of communication. I'll take everything that happens in the company is my responsibility. So if something does go sideways, it's not on you that happened, right? I mean, if you don't do something properly, I'll address that with you. But at the end of the day, I'm on the hook for that problem, right? And
so radical responsibility, right? You're taking radical responsibility.
Yeah, and that's what being a business owner is, right? I mean, if your guys show up to work they get paid, right?
Yeah.
And if you're not capable of organizing them properly, or managing their labor in a productive way, you're toast. So
yeah, well, if your guys show up and they don't get paid, they're going to stop showing up pretty quick.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really about building. Like, I think about this a lot because I've spent most of my time in politics, which also is a different kind of labor, right? There's a lot of volunteers, there's a lot of paid staff, and then the politicians are paid too. And one of the things I find is that the really good leaders are the ones that take like the people whose employees will fall on a sword for them are the ones that always take responsibility, never shift blame. They're like, no, actually, you know what? You messed up on this. Here's why you did it wrong. I'm not angry because I have to take responsibility.
Yeah, right. I think you were sharing with me a little while ago about your time kind of like working for Harper and stuff like that, and just how anything that would happen in within the PMO's office that went sideways, you would be getting a call to come in and answer to him of why this happened, right?
Exactly. And the thing was, like, I mean, Harper has his haters, but nobody worked harder than Harper.
Oh,
he would read through 300, 400 pages of memos a night, right? He would go, they would give him what was called his night file, and he would go home and read all the memos we'd written to him. Yeah. And then he would correct the grammar in our freaking memos. Like, this guy was attention to detail. Like, he is just, his mind is on another level.
Yeah, but the small things do matter, I think, when, you're like, we're not tolerating things that are ineligible or,
these are very concrete puzzles that are being fixed, right?
Every detail matters. I know there's like stories about Steve Jobs where like he would come in to like inspect sort of like the new model or whatever. And, he'd be like, oh, no, this, like the edge of this computer, needs to be, different or whatever. It's like, well, it doesn't change anything about the computer itself, but just that microscope, that's the art of it, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, art is details. And why don't you speak a little bit to that in music?
Yeah. I think, I don't know. It's kind of self-explanatory a little bit. But,
True. I mean, I guess what I'll just say, when I watch you play music, you get lost in focus. Mm-hmm. And what you're focused on is the details of the sounds that you're creating. And then you're tweaking it a little bit, right? Yeah. And that's how you create art, is paying attention to the little details. Otherwise, you're not going to create anything. You're just going to be pounding on the piano, right?
Yeah.
I mean, music is math.
Essentially it's a universal, like actual natural phenomena, right? It's like literally like the vibrations and this is something that's learning about music production and stuff like that kind of really helped me with, and like like shifting EQs and stuff like that. I think all musicians should learn about EQ, like basically just like the wavelengths of sound and that, and how the velocity that you press a note with impacts the entire like sonic structure of how that sound is perceived, right? And it's just like, the minutia is just like beyond comprehension, that kind of maybe flies under the radar to an average listener or whatever. But like there's the phrase "devil in the details," but I use the phrase in music that God is in the details.
Oh, there's a line, folks. God is in the details. And you know what? I think this goes to something that it took me way longer than it should have to learn, which is you have to love the process. If all you care about is the outcome and you don't love the process, you're never going to achieve anything. Because, and even if you do achieve something, you're going to get to that. You're going to get there, and after you achieve it, you're going to be like, well, what now? Right? Because you won't have built up this love of doing the thing, and that you're like. There's this great line in Fitzgerald's Paradise Lost where he says, "It was always the becoming he dreamed of, never the being."
Milton was Paradise Lost.
Oh, I'm sorry. This Side of Paradise is Fitzgerald. This Side of Paradise. So we'll put that in the show notes, Zach. It's this side of paradise. And what I just love about that quote is it changes the frame with which you approach everything, because you have to be the thing once you become it. And this is a problem that a lot of politicians face, is they finally achieve their goal and they don't have a plan for once they're there.
Right.
And so they just fumble the ball. And
right. Well, it's about, I think so many times the trap that people fall into is focusing on being status oriented as opposed to goal oriented, right?
Yes.
If you're goal oriented, then the status will likely come. I mean, then nothing's guaranteed, but to achieve competence is really the primary aim of, every achiever.
Well, as you say, competence breeds confidence.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's on the topic of like quotes and stuff, there's a line from Mozart that goes, love is the soul of genius.
Oh, love alone is worth the fight, my brother.
True.
So I want to go on this because we are suffering a crisis of leadership in Canada right now. And basically, well, Dan, why don't you share a little bit of your frustration about what's happening, and then I'll kind of analyze it from a political angle.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it goes without saying that we want what's best for the greater good, and we want everybody to be, safe and happy and prosperous and what have you. But yeah, I think what's going on right now with like COVID and the lockdowns and stuff like that, it's really just the ultimate case of government overreach that we've seen in our lives. Like, I have the right to get sick.
Yeah.
if I want to, yeah. Right?
Well, no, apparently you don't.
Well, not anymore. No, I don't have that right. And I have the right to, pursue my economic well-being and financial stability and what have you. And I don't, okay, great. You use the mint to churn out billions of dollars that you are handing out like hotcakes, but that's doing absolutely nothing for the prosperity of Canada.
Yeah.
The
fact that governments think injecting money into the economy at this level is in any way smart. It has never been an intelligent move in the history of the world. You know what happens when you inject? So the Romans, you know what they used to do? Because they were trying to they wanted more currency. So they would cut the corners off the coins, take the little shavings and make new coins. And it's like, that's literally inflating that's where the idea of inflating a currency came. Yes, and eventually people wouldn't even take the coins because they're worthless. Like, why do I want it? And that's the problem with fiat currency. Now, what a lot of people like the gold bugs and the, go back to the gold standard, people don't realize is that deflation is even more dangerous than inflation. That's what happened in the 1880s. But what we're going to see happen, and we will see this, mark my words, everyone who's listening, is massive inflation. And you know what you want to be doing when there's massive inflation? You want to own hard assets, land, real estate, precious metals. Like, that's going to be where the play is. But I just want to talk about the failure of leadership, because leadership is not about finding out what the people want and giving it to them. That's not how you run your company. That's not how a pastor runs a church. It's not how a mom runs a
you have to be aware of it, but
you have to be aware of how they're feeling. But a leader says, this is where we're going.
Yeah.
Right? They don't say, where do you want to go?
and this is the best course of action. And I mean, that's the skill of leadership, right? Because I mean, you don't want any fool just leading the charge towards Armageddon. But
well, this is always been the issue I've had with progressives is I'm like, cool, you're a progressive. I love it. Where are we going? And they never have an answer. They can never tell me.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me what the end goal is.
What are we progressing towards?
Yeah, like the very word. Like let's talk about meaning of words here. You can't progress towards a non-goal.
Right.
Like, to progress is to literally move in a direction. Well, where are we going?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of times those political ideologies have become essentially more or less, just buzzwords that pertain to a particular, ideology or framework.
Well, they're memes, right? They're emotional. They're what a meme fundamentally is an idea encapsulated in more than words, right? It's iconography, like the Eastern Orthodox, iconography. The Eastern Orthodox have been playing with this idea for millennia, and we're witnessing memes taking on a huge role in even the markets with Wall Street bets and everything that's happening in GameStop. But more importantly, people think in symbols. I've been trying to explain this to people. People don't think in words. Most people think in symbols.
Words are symbols.
Yeah. Words are simpler symbols than an emotive response to an image.
Right. Yeah, I think that's actually a good and interesting point, is that we are symbolic beings. Even the concept of language is symbolism, right?
Exactly.
And we just, it's so ingrained in us that we just take it for granted at this point. But
it's one of those unknown unknowns. We're not aware of how little we know about how we think.
Right. And I mean, art is essentially a symbol as well. I mean, our art is the kind of original meme, I guess you could say, almost.
Yeah, well, art is about making you feel something.
Yes, exactly.
Like if it doesn't make you feel anything, it's not art.
It doesn't communicate anything necessarily intellectual or in the kind of, I mean, I'm using the word brain kind of loosely, just like something that appeals to the head as opposed to the heart.
Yes.
But yeah, essentially the role of art is to communicate to the heart,
Well, what I love is it goes right under the brain, right? It bypasses the intellect.
That's transcendence, right?
Yes, that's transcendence. Exactly. And this, go ahead. Sorry.
You just experience something that is in line with the main vein of
the universe. Right. Exactly. And there's truth. I think that's truth, right? I'm a big believer in the idea of truth. And when I say truth, this is what I mean. Alignment with reality.
Right.
If you can align yourself. So like when you're doing a roofing job, you don't have a choice but to align yourself with reality. Right?
Yeah, it's very rugged and raw.
If you rip off the roof and are like, it might not rain, it might rain, I'm not going to tarp it.
Yeah,
you can end up in a very bad situation very quickly.
Sure. Yeah,
right? It doesn't matter how you feel,
right? Or what I would prefer or like,
right? And that's the problem that we're in right now. We've got to a point where we're starting to deny reality for the purpose of protecting people's feelings, but in the long run, that doesn't help them, because not aligning yourself with reality, and this is the problem with COVID, right? This is the fundamental issue, is that fear has completely trumped facts. Facts don't matter anymore.
Well, I think throughout the 20th century, we've gone much more into like subjective feeling than like objective truth, And I mean, we're just seeing the repercussions of it now. It's like, well, whatever I feel is like, that's true to me. It's like, well, yeah, great. Like you can feel any type of ways, schizophrenics feel like a lot of different things,
manics feel like they're on top of the world all the time.
Exactly. They feel like they can take on the world.
They're invincible. Nothing can hurt them.
Nobody can tell them no.
No, exactly.
And I really and we were talking as well about just like the role that the media has been playing in all of this, and like who benefits from all of this. Like
key bono is the question you should always be asking: who benefits? And the truth of the matter is, the people who are keeping this going are making a killing on it. The media has never had so many viewers.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. And so like they're getting all these eyeballs towards them now with the latest update on what the COVID news is or whatever. What incentive do they have to give a sober view of this?
They have they're completely incentivized in the other direction. And here's the other thing. Like, we're listening to these doctors. It's like, we have to trust the experts. I'm like, a doctor's job is to save every single life possible. Every single one. Yeah. So they're always going to advise to maximize saving lives. But here's the thing. We haven't shut down all the roads and refused to allow everyone to drive because people die on them.
Right.
We haven't banned smoking because it gives people lung cancer.
Right. At a certain point, you have to acknowledge, like, do we have rights or do we not?
Yeah. Like, is the government, ask people, are we going to let our liberties just be taken away? I mean, there was a lady in Calgary, Alberta. She arrived on a plane and was just confiscated by the police, and her family doesn't know where she is.
Oh my goodness, that's wild.
And we go after China and say they're this communist dictatorship. They're not in lockdown in China right now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, why would they be?
Well, yeah, exactly.
That's not good for business.
Japan's not in lockdown.
Yeah.
Sweden's not in lockdown.
Yeah.
There are places that you're not seeing like dead bodies in the streets.
Yeah. No, well, like I know several people that have gotten it, and I mean, for sure, like obviously, the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions are the most vulnerable, and
we should be calling in the military to protect old folks' homes. Like we could pour all the money that would be needed,
every resource imaginable to not only protect people who are vulnerable, but I would even go as far as to say, we'll just support everybody who's afraid of it.
Yeah.
Just say you're afraid of it, and then you can, you'll
get the CERB check.
The seat of the government, and I'll go out and live my life.
Yes. I bet you a lot of restaurants would love to be open right now. I know. Sure. I've talked to a lot of cab drivers, a lot of hotel people. All of them are saying, what are we doing? This is catastrophic.
Yeah. Well, I was actually just over at Best Buy this morning, and I had to take my computer over to get repaired. And so I show up at the door, and like I knew things were a bit tighter now or whatever. But so the lady met me at the door. The door was locked. And I met her at the door, and she's like, "Oh, you can't come in." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, can I just, leave the computer here with you?" She's like, "No, you have to call us. We'll mail you a box, and you can put your computer in that box and send it back to us." I was like, man.
Hey, it's even worse. When we go to get some weed, like if we just want to buy weed, we have to go back into our vehicle, order it on our phones, and then go pick it up.
Right.
It's like,
as opposed to just tell the person what we want. Exactly.
Like the rules have become ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. It's way past the point of any sort of like rational. Like really what it comes down to, I think, is originally there was a whole lot of, and I think you and I both fell into this category of like being concerned, and
we didn't know. And when you don't know something, I mean, the fear of the unknown, we talked about this on Senator Husakis's episode, but fear of the unknown is one of the most prevalent human fears imaginable.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And you don't want to take, there's good reason for that as well. You don't want to take unnecessary risks and just hurtle headlong into the abyss. But
what if we do, though, Dan? What if we do? Do I dare disturb the universe?
In a minute, there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse.
I've measured my life by coffee spoons.
But yeah, I think really, I mean, you can say the same thing that you mentioned about doctors, about the politicians. And again, it has nothing to do with any sort of disrespect to doctors or anything of that nature. It's just what they're focused on is a sliver of what the whole scope of human existence is, right? But with the politicians, it's like, really what it comes down to is they are operating in fear 24/7, and they don't want to have to answer to or take responsibility for a single iota of, a death being possibly on their hands, right?
And that's what leadership is. You know what? Unfortunately, your decisions, if you're a real leader in a big role, your decisions are going to have consequences.
Yeah. We've had a lot of, as you said, there's been an absolute vacuum of leadership, I think, and
we have to save this country from timid men. Enough.
Yes, exactly. And timidity is seemingly the operating, I
just I don't know. We could just maybe reflect on this, but it's interesting because when you're working with your employees, you need to give them structure because of fear, right?
Right. Well, I'm as a company and as a business, you're essentially protecting them from the chaos of the uncertainty.
Of reality.
Yeah. You have stability, you have organization, you have, you show up to work, you get a paycheck, you know what is expected of you, you know what you'll receive, right? As a business owner, you're just hurtling through the chaos and trying to...
You're an order bringer. See, yes. I have this whole theory that life itself, it takes chaos and brings order. Look at plants. Look at animals. Look at life. Like the only things that are alive, they take just these random things, sunlight, freaking water, nitrogen, and they make something a living out of it. They take the chaos and they bring order to it. That is fundamentally what life is. And humans are the apex of life. There's no question. I get so tired of this, humans are killing the planet. What? The planet is going to die in 1 billion years and be eaten by the sun. Like it's inevitable. I think consciousness is what's valuable.
Right. I think George Carlin had some quip about that. He was talking about, the kind of hardcore environmentalists and like how, like humans are destroying the earth and stuff. And it's like, how arrogant do you have to be to think that you have the power to ruin
the entire planet? The planet's going to be fine.
It'll spit you off its face long before you have any sort of real.
It'll kill you right off, and then it will regrow life.
Yes,
so life finds a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess what we could summarize all this is, stop being so timid. Bring order to the chaos. Like, that's what Dan is doing with his business. That's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. Zach and I are working tirelessly to try to bring you the stories, which is really a way of ordering the events of your life to make sense. That's what a story is.
Yeah.
And like the best parts of our stories are the characters in them, which is our friends, family, the people that cross our paths.
Yeah, and you and I have talked a lot lately about the Jordan Peterson concept of future authoring, right?
Yes.
And you are the canvas and the artist.
Yeah, like your life is both a canvas and you get to paint it.
Yes.
and I hate this victim mentality that has taken over. Somehow we live in a society where the highest rank you can hold is victim. Well, I'm sorry. Like, that's sad. We can do better than that. Like, victims are people who have been hurt by a bad system. They're not our heroes.
Well, I think it stems from a moral place that's just been perverted and bastardized, right? Because it stems from kind of like the liberal philosophy of wanting to look out for the most marginalized and vulnerable in society, right?
Which is a very noble goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that we would all want to strive towards. But what that sometimes evolves into is like, so because there's so much like attention, sympathy, and resource being poured to those, victimized groups, there is a proclivity and a desire to want to be incorporated in that, because if you're not satisfied with your own life, maybe you can look externally as to why that is the case, and then there's a whole group of people out there that will just lavish you with sympathy and concern and resources and what have you, right?
But you don't get out of it's like we
that's
said
not a helpful
earlier.
Mentality to be in.
It's not helpful. Like, even if you are a victim, it's better to take responsibility for your own change.
Yes, at all times.
At all times, that will always be the better method.
Yeah, and it's not a like a flattering message to send to some people, because real hardship does exist, and it's hard to look someone in the eye who's going through a hard time and be like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? But at the end of the day, that is the best advice, even if it's hard to take.
It's like
it hurts sometimes.
And this, because freedom, agency, believing that you can actually change your stars,
being your own master.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fundamentally, I think, what happiness is. There's a lot of promulgated studies about financial stability and how that relates to happiness, and they found that there was a correlation between income and happiness up to 70 grand per year. And then beyond that, it had absolutely no, influence on how happy they found people to be.
Well, there was one study they did where someone who won the lottery and someone who became a quadriplegic, and they measured their level of happiness 2 years afterwards for both of them, and it was almost the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
because if you don't have your basic needs met, then you that's a tough life. You will struggle to find happiness if you don't have the bottom tier of the Maslow's hierarchy taken care of.
You got to cover the food and shelter and things like that, which is actually why I think we should just house every homeless person. It would save us.
Yes.
They should all just get a house.
Yeah.
Right. If you're so hard done by that you can't find a place to live, society should help you, because it's going to cost us more having you wander the streets anyway.
Yeah. And I'm also very on board with like a guaranteed jobs program as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's like I live in Hamilton, and I look around and there's so many things that could be done that would improve the city immensely if you just, paid somebody, a relatively reasonable wage to go out and do it, whether it's like, just like, it's like washing windows on Barton Street that are just caked in decades of dust,
Yeah.
Wash them up, paint things, garden,
like bring order to the chaos.
Yes, exactly. And then you also have and of course that doesn't necessarily apply to people that have disabilities and stuff like that, right? But
no, I think there's people that need the state to take care of them because for whatever reason, whether it's disabilities or their situations are just too rough. And we should all be happy to do it. But we shouldn't rely on the state to take care of us. It shouldn't be something that you're excited about. There are people who literally have been bragging to me about their CERB checks. Yeah. And I'm like, you're being bribed with your own money. It's your money.
Yeah.
The government doesn't just magically have money.
And you're not taking it from the government. You're taking it from everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Taxation is theft.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that line the other day, and I don't necessarily actually agree with that line. Really, I think there is some taxation that I'm fully on board with. Like, I don't really want to manage the construction of my own roads,
hospitals, healthcare. Right. Yeah, I agree. But I mean, at the end of the day, what happens if you don't pay your taxes? Violence will happen to you. You'll be put in prison eventually, or something will. So the only thing that's keeping society in line on taxation is violence. Did you know in Greece, basically no one pays their taxes? This is the big problem in Greece because everyone's like, fuck you, government.
I can totally see that too. I know a few Greeks and they love sticking it to the man.
Oh, they love sticking it to the government. And I kind of love that about them.
For sure, yeah. There's a certain quality to that that's
but I think that's like the responsibility of leaders is to, like you said at the very beginning of this episode, you need to give people a belief that you have a plan. And I can tell you right now, I don't believe anyone in Canada has a real plan of getting out of this right now.
Yeah, no, it's just coastal. Like, and we had a conversation the other day about, the people who are putting these restrictions and guidelines on everybody and like hyping COVID to the moon and whatever. None of them have missed a paycheck through all of this.
No, not once.
If anything, a lot of them have benefited more than ever. You look at like what's gone on with the stock market this year, and everybody who had like loose assets that were like put into the stock market, they've done fantastic. It's the people, it's the working and common man that is like truly suffering, and maybe they don't even know it yet because they've been
getting $2,000 a month,
right?
But what they don't realize is that inflation hurts the poor more than anyone.
Yeah. Well, if the cost of living goes up, I mean, all their disposable income goes towards that, right?
Necessities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're reaching the end, but I hope everyone's enjoying these conversations as much as Dan and I are. But thanks for joining us again. And Zach, do you have any last summary words?
You guys are both ugly.
Thank you for listening to The Canadian Story. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The CAD Story. That's The CAD Story. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let's work together to remind Canadians how great their country is.